everybody? Welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We have a great one for you, and here is what is on the show. We will take a look at, of course, we're leading with the big conflicts going on in Gaza at the moment and all over Israel and kind of historic Palestine. I'm talking about this quite a lot lately, and it's a big news because Biden voiced support today for a ceasefire in a call with Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu. How strong was that support really? And should he go further in ensuring that people aren't getting murdered all over historic Palestine, Israel, the West Bank, Gaza, all of the horrific things that have been happening. Also, we're just going to go through this New York Times just general review of what has been going on. How far has Biden really gone in terms of overturning the Trump legacy? Where has he differed? Where has he stayed the same? In a surprising amount of places where he has stayed the same. We'll get into that. And finally, Bill Gates, Jeffrey Epstein. That is not a good combination, folks. I'm going to tell you that right now. We're going to be breaking that down for you as well. But first, we start with the big news from the White House today. President Biden expressed support for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas on Monday during a call with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. They've been very kind of unclear on this. They've suggested a lot about how they want to continue to. They've kind of hinted that, we're really thinking about it. We're not ruling out anything. Anything is on the table. Benny Gantz and all those people, Benjamin Netanyahu. And pretty much every figure in Israeli politics knows that threatening to murder Arabs is an incredibly politically popular thing to do in Israel. So especially those who are facing some political bad fortune at the moment, shall we say, literally, that's Benjamin Netanyahu. Those type of people are the ones who are going to be doing some turning of the wheels, I think, really and that's what we've seen over the past 2 weeks, just turning of the wheels for political gain. But the turning of the wheels has killed many Gazans, and a lot of those Gazans have been children. I believe 30% have been children. Really kind of shows you how disgraceful this kind of Israel has the right to self-defense charade has been. One of the things they did over the weekend was obviously attack this or blow up this AP News, and it was this AP News building in Gaza, kind of the Gaza Bureau. So this building housed Gazan journalists. I believe local Gazan news was in there to a certain degree. AP and just very much international news like Al Jazeera was in there as well. They just blew the building, gave them an hour warning because supposedly Hamas was in there. And this is, of course, all this hand-wringing about the fact that, Hamas is in every little building, every refugee camp we bomb, every road. They're using the roads to transport, like, terrorist intelligence. So that's why we had to blow them up right around the hospital. Like, there was a video out there tonight of people being attacked, Palestinians being attacked, other Palestinians going to help, and the IDF coming to encircle the person who had just been attacked and stop the medics from getting to them. This is again in the wake of the airstrike. There's been pictures of people pulling kids out of airstrike rubble. Like, it has been an absolutely horrific scenes coming out of Gaza in a big way, and it has turned the tide. People marching all over the country and all over the world for Palestinian solidarity. But I really have to say the mainstream media has failed to adapt. So has Joe Biden, and so has really the politics of the moment to this massive shift in public opinion. It's going to be interesting to see if it will. Like, is this going to be kind of another just big deflation, or will there be some sort of substantive policy change, some sort of substantive policy difference? Like, there already has been a much bigger, pretty significant increase of Democratic figures in Congress, led by, I believe, John Ossoff, calling for a pretty, it's not the perfect policy by any stretch, and no one's talking about the aid that we send to Israel. No one's talking about conditioning it in any way, but just getting a little tougher is kind of what John Ossoff wants to do. But on the media side, this is CNN's Brian Stelter, CNN media correspondent, talking to AP reporter Sally Busby about this attack, and just the way he really adopts the idea of framing wholesale. And again, you have to understand, this is the guy who was one of the biggest perpetrators in the narrative that people like Jim Acosta and all the people who like stand up every day to, whatever dumb idiot Trump put on the White House podium to defend him, that they are national heroes whose lives are in danger because they are there reporting the truth and facing so much lies from this dangerous White House. It's so scary to be a journalist in this kind of time. Trump people want to lynch you everywhere you go. That was the rhetoric he was pushing. Trump is so dangerous for freedom of the press. You'd think he would be a little bit more pro-journalist than he is here in this clip.
How are your AP colleagues in Gaza doing today? Are they all right?
They are doing fine. They're extraordinarily resilient and committed journalists who are focused on telling the story fairly from both sides. And they're doing fine. They're rattled, but they are working today. And we are enormously grateful they are safe.
I've read that AFP, that another newswire, is providing space for the bureaus that were affected. Like, how, on a physical level, how are you all operating in Gaza today with your bureau bombed?
We are looking for some temporary quarters. AFP has been wonderful, and we thank them. We are attempting to obviously ensure that this does not disrupt the important mission of telling the world what is happening in this conflict right now. I think the reality of the situation is that office in Gaza is in a critical location, and this does impact the world's right to know what is happening on both sides of the conflict in real time. That's a very
I mean, obviously, like, you would think it would be a little bit better and kind of a little bit more sensible for someone like that, like someone who's in a position where she's the leader of a incredibly important news source, just in terms of just getting information to people, like, generally, from hard-to-reach places around the world. She is the CEO. Their building was just bombed, and they're claiming that Hamas was in there. And they're also implying that AP helped house terrorists. There's people like Rick Grinnell going out there and be like, pro tip, don't use Hamas as your landlord. Like, just where did you find that out? Oh, the IDF's Twitter feed. Like, that is the best that they have in this situation. And it is absolutely nothing. I mean, there's a certain limit to what I think Sally Busby can do, but it's all this kind of stuff in terms of like really challenging the government. I think she has to be like a certain level of diplomatic in this situation. But Brian Stelter does not have to be diplomatic. He can say what really he should do is push her to take a better position here on this. But look at what he goes on to do.
Very important thing to keep in mind. It impairs the ability to report events in Gaza in real time.
And I mean, she goes pretty hard here to say that, like, yeah, we are suffering. Our news output is suffering. I mean, duh, your building gets freaking blown up with all your equipment in it. Like, luckily they're able to evacuate everybody in time, but they were like a massive news agency. It was severely hampered. It's an attack on, like, U.S. liberal values. And that is, again, the U.S. doesn't operate with liberal values, and it really never has. What they do, and the reason why they prop up Israel the way they do, is because, and again, it's not really, there's a certain extent to which, the AIPAC lobby is allowed to thrive in the United States. It's because it's beneficial in the United States. The United States benefits tremendously from having pretty much a client state in the region, exerting so much control and influence over the region. And people like Joe Biden and people all over the United States, like upper echelons of society, are willing to forgive whatever and use whatever mechanisms they humanly possibly can to justify the crimes that it commits and the crimes that really it has to commit to exist in the way that it does with the people that it currently has in it. So, like, it's clear to anyone who's like being honest about the mood on the ground is that, whatever position Palestinians are and however they feel about Israelis after being kicked off their land for years and years and years, Israelis also clearly want to burn Arabs from the earth. Like, they chant it, they show it by, their quote-unquote Knights of Broken Glass that they've been doing recently, their, public televised lynchings, that all that kind of stuff. It kind of shows you where their head's at, and are any Arabs, like, safe in this area. Like, it is such an incredible, or Palestinians or whatever, are safe in this area. Like, it is very, very hard to make the case that this is something that can be, like, this is like a situation where they are the Israelis are the threatening ones are here. When you have right-wing moms walking around terrorizing Palestinians every day in Israeli cities with no police resistance. No police resistance. Like, you cannot make a situation more clearly dire than that one there.
It reduces the flow of information coming from Gaza. It hampers the ability to tell the story fairly on both sides. It does not, however, silence AP and is not going to from doing that. And we are scrambling to ensure we can report this story, and we are reporting it at this moment.
Do you believe the Israeli government's, the Israeli military's explanation that Hamas was operating in the same building?
Look, we're not taking sides in the actual conflict. The Associated Press does not take sides in conflicts. But we are in favor, and what we do believe in is protecting the world's right to know what is going on in this conflict or in any conflict. This is an important...
Like, I mean, at least your building gets freaking blown up. At least say they shouldn't have blown up your building. Like, you have that level of self-respect, and they just completely lie about it. And literally, they're accusing you of harboring terrorists. They're one of the biggest tenants. AP is one of the biggest tenants in that building in a major international, major international news source. So it is just insane to see that is going on in that way, and she doesn't do anything about it.
Story, and because of the actions yesterday, the world is going to know less. So what we would
but did you ever have any warning? Were you ever informed before yesterday that Hamas might be operating there?
Oh yeah, they were warned. They were warned by the IDF. They may just say, "Oh yeah, Hamas, they're operating there. You got to get out. Trust me, you guys are harboring terrorists. You don't even know it. It could be the janitor. So you got to get out of your building, and we have to blow it up." It's an apartment building as well. It houses Palestinians' homes. That's not to say we're spending a little bit too much time on this, but what he goes on is it's incredible.
In the building?
No.
They were never. Yeah, again, they were never warned. So that's an important thing to remember here from what Busby is saying.
Because there have been stories in the past,
because it wasn't
a former AP reporter who claims that rockets would lift off from Gaza toward Israel, and the Gaza Bureau would look the other way.
I don't know what the hell he's saying there, but it certainly sounds like he's accusing AP journalists of aiding and abetting Hamas rocket fire. What is that supposed to? Maybe I'm being crazy here. Maybe it's certainly possible, but that just sounds ridiculous. But anyway, that is just another one of the kind of really awful things Israelis did over the weekend. Or I should say the Israeli military. Israel has bombed power lines. Gaza is now in the dark. They are really getting in danger of, food shortages, shortages of really serious supplies. Israel's been caught faking another video of Hamas rockets next to Gaza homes. The Israeli military tweeted a video containing footage it falsely claimed showed Hamas rockets near civilian homes in Gaza. The tweet was later deleted. So 200 people have been this is as of the 17th of May. This is as of today. 200 people have been killed in Gaza since the Israeli attack began more than a week ago. Israeli included 59 children and 35 women. So yeah, again, clearly targeting civilians without much fear or favor. So this is as of Ministry of Health Gaza Strip. Updates of total victims of Israeli aggression on the Gaza Strip: 200 martyrs, including 59 children, 35 women, and 1,305 injuries. This is from the Gaza Health Ministry, and it's from a guy called Press 21. So yeah, this is really just insane stuff here. This is the Al-Quds brigades saying that we tell the enemy to bombard with bombardment and destruction with further destruction and terror. So it doesn't really make any sense. But whatever. We're going to move on. And pretty much Israel absolutely going in meltdown May. Really making people were remarking on Twitter how they are Zionism is the main feature in meltdown May. Israel going as far today as to post rockets, a threat of 100 rockets fired from Hamas, to show the pain that they have had, all that they've had to deal with, the destruction that's been caused in Israel. They are like in the dark right now. Their children are dying left and right. Like it is. It's just like it's tough to be in Israel. Way tougher than Gaza and the West Bank, of course, because living in a country that is currently invading and doing ethnic cleansing in another location that's in close proximity, but not exactly where you are. Like that's the toughest thing of all, of course. So the dilemma is for Israel is how to square this horrific reality with its propaganda about protecting civilians. So the solution here is to lie and blame the victims. Israel's habitual claim that Hamas and other Palestinian residents organizations use Palestinian civilians as human shields by routinely firing rockets from residential areas or even the rooftops of homes. Israel got caught lying after it posted a video on Saturday titled "Hamas's use of human shields explained." The tweet also says, Israel fights to protect its civilians. Hamas uses civilians to protect itself. But the video is old. It is, as Raphael Satter, a Reuters journalist, observed, it included footage of a 2018 Israel training exercise presented as if it had been shot recently in Gaza. So this is literally is an Israeli tank moving through what looks to be an Israeli town, and it is a practice exercise. So just complete lying there. Eric Toller is a researcher of the Western government-funded think tank Bellingcat. He observed that the truck with the missiles appears to have been a decoy being used as part of an Israeli training exercise. It was not filmed in Gaza. The image is taken from a video filmed more than 2 years ago in the village of Abu Sanan in Galilee, about as far as you can get from Gaza within Israel. Cropped footage of the trucks from the 2018 video in the now deleted Israeli army video posted on Saturday was shown. So the 2018 video was posted on an Israeli Facebook page on the 25th of November 2018. Caption Hebrew says, quote, trucks with missiles took a wrong turn and entered the village of Abu Sanan in the north. So, yeah, not close to Palestine at all, or Gaza at all, which is in the south. So that is a I'd say a pretty fair update of what's been going on on the ground over in Israel right now. Let's take a look at what our government is doing. President Biden expressed support for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas on Monday during a call with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In a readout of Biden's call, the White House officials said the president expressed his support for a ceasefire and discussed using U.S. engagements with Egypt and other partners toward that end. So this is pretty much what the U.S. has always done, is kind of do ceasefires. But, scroll down, read the fine print. They are selling, so Biden just sold Israel $735 million in new weapons, right as, guys, we should think about having a ceasefire. Egypt, can you do something for us? So far, Israel has resisted efforts offered by Egypt, Qatar, and the United States to broker a ceasefire, and Hamas has continued its rocket fire into Israel. So for all intents and purposes, Israel is not even interested in this ceasefire in the first place. It is just a complete big leap to do absolutely nothing. And really what Biden is doing here by continuing this path is ignoring really a lot of public opinion and the way things have changed, a growing number of members in his own party, and continuing to stand by as children are literally getting slaughtered on a day-to-day basis, and really awful things are happening without any kind of accountability. And the United States, they're propping this up. They're doing it really for their own, neo-imperialist interests, and it is, and it always really has been incredibly beneficial for them. So this statement fell short of an immediate demand to end Israel's bombing campaign in Gaza, which has been met with rocket fire by Hamas from Gaza into Israel. The White House has also referred to Biden as reiterating his firm support for Israel's right to defend itself against indiscriminate rocket attacks. So pretty much parroting the line there. Biden administration had previously avoided the use of the term ceasefire with top officials like Secretary of State Antony Blinken, talking about the need for a sustainable calm, and others talking about the need for restraint. So pretty much using words like ceasefire. They're just going to coax Israel back to the table here because, it is literally, what is going on here is they kind of have to act in really the least convincing way possible that they can, they're caring, and they're Democrats, so they're trying. They want to do this humanely. They want to rein them in a little bit, but really, no, like nothing of that nature is happening. Again, $735 million in new weapons going to Israel now. By late Monday, the Israeli bombardments had killed 212 people in Gaza, and the Hamas rockets had killed at least 10 in Israel. So Hamas had fired as many rockets in 8 days as the Israeli military said, which is about 3,350, as it did in the 50-day war the two sides fought in 2014. Again, no acknowledgement of the fact that they're killing women and children here in this New York Times piece. But again, all these scary rockets that are firing, these big scary Hamas rockets that dink off the side of the Iron Dome 90% of the time. The fact that, obviously you wouldn't like to see Hamas rockets. You got to say that. Hamas rockets would not be good. But saying that, Hamas shouldn't be firing rockets, and, Israel shouldn't, they're both doing things that are just as bad, is completely ignoring massive amounts of context. So far, Israel has resisted efforts by Egypt, Qatar, and the United States to broker a ceasefire, and again, Hamas has continued its fire into Israel. In his conversations with Middle East leaders, Biden has tried to move the United States into a more neutral role as a peacemaker. I got to stop you there, because that is just ridiculous. This is Ned Price, the American spokesperson for the State Department, who had an incredible moment last week that I'm sure you've probably seen when asked about the Palestinian right to self-defense, and as opposed to Israel.
Where should the Palestinians go to get accountability for what they claim to be problems? To Israeli courts? Where do they go?
Matt, look, we, of course, the United States is always going to stand up for human rights. We're always going to stand up.
Where do they go? Where do they go?
Matt, that is why I think you have heard us continue
Matt
to
Price,
endorse
AP.
and to call for a two-state solution to
His
this
building got
long-running
bombed
conflict.
days later.
A two-state solution
Israeli
because it
courts?
protects
Where do
Israel's
they go?
identity as a Jewish and democratic state, but also because it will give the Palestinians a viable state of their own and fulfill their legitimate aspirations for dignity and self-determination.
Where do they?
just the annoyance, the growing annoyance there over the blatantly, boilerplate, blech, paste answer from that State Department flack, as they call them in the industry, is really quite something to behold. All right, we will talk about how Biden is doing in comparison to Trump next. Hello, everybody. You want to keep it locked to the Spencer Walsh Radio Network. We have a lot of fun stuff coming your way on the programs. Newsflash is, of course, new every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Our flagship show continuing to bring you the news you need in this new political era. Uncultured is now live mixes, getting back into it. And, of course, that'll be every Saturday. And Hidden History is out every Thursday, wherever you get your podcast. This is the Spencer Walsh Radio Network's new spring lineup. You can listen wherever you get your podcast. And please be sure to rate us, review us, send us some comments. Spreaker.com/TSWS is the way to do it, or wherever you listen. However you listen, thank you so much for listening. This is Spencer Walsh Radio Network. This is Newsflash, and we are getting right back into it today. We're talking a little bit about this interesting, the big thing we saw from Joe Biden was he wasn't Donald Trump. He was going to restore the soul of the nation. And I think this is going to be kind of an interesting test, or kind of like look back for a lot of people on the liberal side of things, because one of the biggest things that they do, or they did during the Trump administration, is kind of paint Trump as a unique evil as uniquely threatening and uniquely outside of the policy perspective or the policy norms, which in a lot of in a lot of behavioral ways obviously he was, but in a surprising number of policy ways he stayed the same. And a lot of the policies where he wanted to get troops out, like for example getting troops out, he was actively resisted. So so on pretty much this here in the New York Times takes us back to on its way at the Giovanni Rosselli on his way at the door in late 2016. The Obama administration sought to draw a line in the sand on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, rather than block a UN Security Council resolution condemning the expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank and the East Jerusalem. The United States abstained. They didn't even vote no. They didn't even vote to condemn. They didn't even vote to say that's not okay. They just abstained. Days later, Secretary of State John Kerry warned in a parting address that the possibility of the two-state solution was dimming as Israeli settlers encroached further into Palestinian-held land. We cannot properly defend and protect Israel if we allow a viable two-state solution to be destroyed before our own eyes, Kerry said. So it's a pretty strong statement there. And then actually from someone like John Kerry, who's also currently in the Biden administration, he was making a statement that was pretty far to the left on the kind of the acceptability spectrum when it came to Israel-Palestine discourse at the time, and for pretty much a lot of the Trump administration. But over the next 4 years, Donald J. Trump showed basically no interest in challenging Israel on the settlements. And by the way, for most of his administration, Obama did not either. Quite the contrary, he embraced the Benjamin Netanyahu administration as one of his favorite foreign leaders, and he took major steps to rubber stamp Israel's expansion into Palestinians' territory. All of which had set up a series of complicated choices for President Biden. Which of Trump's moves can be turned back and which are basically irreversible? How much latitude should the administration give to the Israeli government as it expands deeper into Palestinian-held land? And now that the Israeli settlements are so predominant, is the two-state solution even a viable goal? And what is the viable, what should the policy be here from the United States? And I really think that, what is the opposition, what is the opposing thing? If you're not going to do a two-state solution, what are you going to do if you're the Biden administration? I don't get that kind of last question there from the New York Times. But so far, Biden has shown little interest in becoming embroiled in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and effectively, that has meant that he has done little to turn back the tide on Israeli expansion into Palestinian-held land or to push back against Israel's attacks on Gaza. Last week, he said that he considered Israel's latest military actions justified, given that Hamas fighters had fired thousands of rockets into Israeli territory since protests and skirmishes, again, instigated by Israeli settlements in East Jerusalem or Israeli evictions in East Jerusalem of Palestinians, was a huge part of why that happened in the first place. And again, that context, gonna add there, even the New York Times does not. At the United Nations, the U.S. had repeatedly blocked efforts in the past week to pass resolutions calling for an immediate ceasefire. That's kind of just their normal script. Oh yeah, we're blocking a resolution for a ceasefire. Yeah, that's another thing. Israel doesn't want to do it. United States doesn't want to do it, and we already talked about how that relationship works. Since then, of course, the Palestinian death toll has risen into the hundreds, including 50 children, and Israel raised a building housing news media offices, drawing international condemnation. This afternoon, in a conversation with Mr. Netanyahu, Biden expressed support for a ceasefire for the first time, but stopped short of demanding an end to Israel's bombing campaign in Gaza and Hamas's rocket fire into Israel. So, Laura Friedman, the president of the Foundation for Middle East Peace, said that for proponents of Palestinian rights, Biden's approach has done little to move the ball forward, saying, quote, the sense of disappointment and betrayal is palpable. I mean, really what is going on here is our tax dollars, again, now $738 million. This guy, he has the nerve to send $730 billion more dollars to Israel after they do all of this crap time and time again. Especially over the past 2 weeks, he goes, approves writes a big fat check to them, and then says, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go on a big public speaking event I'm going to go on a big public tour to Dearborn, Michigan, one of the most heavily populated Arabic places in the country. It is the unmitigated Like, just talk about manufacturing something. Like, what is wrong? Like, that's really certainly something to do. If you're talking about politics, he will most likely be met with a pretty big protest there, so that's good. But it is really, like, this is where this guy's head's at. Like, this is the level he is operating on. And it shows you how, like, even though public opinion and the conversation has shifted a lot, it doesn't really seem like the policy has at this point. All right, we're going to move on and talk about Bill Gates, who everyone up until, about a week or so ago wanted to be, like, could he save the world, Bill Gates? He should be in charge of our vaccine distribution. He should be in charge of telling everybody what to do with their health, what to do with their education. He should get free reign with all the children in Africa. Like, that is something that we should definitely give him. Like, he's a great guy, humanitarian expert, Bill Gates. Well, what do you know? This incredible headline in the Daily Beast. They know how to write them. Jeffrey Epstein gave Bill Gates advice on how to end his toxic marriage, sources say. So, imagine this guy's getting his marriage advice, at the very least, from Jeffrey Epstein. You don't want to go too far into depth with that. But anyway, so this is in the Daily Beast. Lachlan Cartwright. Bachelor sex offender Jeffrey Epstein gave Bill Gates advice on ending his marriage with Melinda after the Microsoft co-founder complained about her during a series of meetings at the money manager's mansion, according to two people familiar with the situation. Like, what incredible optics there for Bill Gates. Who do you go to get away from your wife, like, get a little, like, downtime, Not the golf course. You don't go like a normal guy, you don't go out to the bar, watch a football game with your bros, whatever. You actually end up hanging out with the most prolific, most wealthy pedophile in the world. Gates used these gatherings at the Epstein $77 million New York townhouse, the famous New York mansion, as an escape for what he told Epstein was a, quote, toxic marriage, a topic both the men found humorous. A person who attended the meetings told the Daily Beast. The billionaire met Epstein dozens of times during starting in 2011. And again, Bill Gates was a guy here who, like, required a weekend away with, like, his ex or something like that. He was like, part of the condition for this marriage, Melinda, is that I have to go just as friends for a weekend away with this other girl. Not, you can't come, but once a year. We got to go for this weekend. Like, it is really, really quite something. And was it like once a quarter or something? Like, my dad told me about it. I was like, wow. Like, this, from that to the Epstein situation doesn't seem like the craziest leap at all. So Gates, in turn, pretty much encouraged Epstein to rehabilitate his image in the media following a 2008 guilty plea for soliciting a minor for prostitution, and Epstein became involved with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So that is always the best thing you can do. He like laundered money a little bit for Epstein. The people familiar with the matter said Gates found freedom in Epstein's lair, where he met a rotating cast of bold-faced names and discussed worldly issues between men's jokes and gossip, kind of a men's club atmosphere that irritated Melinda. It's not an overstatement. Going to Jeffries was a respite from his marriage, said one of the people who was at several of these meetings, adding that Epstein and Gates were very close. A representative for Bill Gates told the Daily Beast, "Your characterization of his meetings is inaccurate." So not a surprise there. So any claim Gates spoke of his marriage or Melinda in a disparaging manner is false. The spokesperson disputed the number of times Epstein and Gates met and said the two men never discussed Epstein getting involved with the foundation. Bill never received or solicited any personal advice of any kind from Epstein on marriage or anything else. So is that whatever. Just more denials from PR people there. The Wall Street Journal recently reported Melinda Gates consulted divorce lawyers in October 2019, and that was around the time it was publicly revealed that Bill had met with Epstein, who died by suicide in jail months earlier, multiple times in the past. So on May 3rd, he attempted suicide. Again, quote-unquote suicide multiple times in the past as well. Just want to put that in there. So on May 3rd, the high-powered couple announced that they were ending their 27-year-old marriage. A 27-year-old marriage in a statement that read in part, "We no longer believe we can grow together as a couple in the next phase of their lives." Last week, the New York Post reported that Gates had told his golfing buddies he was in a loveless marriage, which had been over for some time, while people described Epstein as a sore spot in the couple's relationship. But Epstein's wasn't the only point of the couple's contention. So the New York Times originally reported that Gates allegedly made advances on women who worked at Microsoft and his foundation while he was married to Melinda, really just like asking them for dates or something like that. Sex and all that stuff. Just pretty blatantly as well, as I understand. The Journal followed up with its own report revealing that Gates resigned from Microsoft's board in 2020 amid an internal investigation about an alleged sexual relationship with a company engineer who came forward late 2019. That was an affair that ended 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, which ended amicably. A Gates spokeswoman told the Journal, adding his departure from the board was not related to the relationship. People close to Gates told the Daily Beast that the deterioration of their relationship could be seen in Bill and Melinda's body language. It was very, very sad. That's like their body language isn't the same anymore. But anyway, really just a incredibly revealing and a big fall from grace for someone who is considered to be pretty much the king of the world, a month ago. Pretty incredible. That's all we got for you today. Sorry for the late news flash. I literally recorded half of this last night and half of this tonight, or today. So yeah, we will be back on Wednesday.